everybody, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show, the place to go to hear out loud and proud what Minnesotans are thinking. And I am your host, Philip Anthony. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you're all doing what? Fantabulous. You know what that is? Fantastic and fabulous. Put together, twice as nice, saves time. That's what I like to say.
That.
So are you feeling fantabulous?
I am feeling fantabulous
You
today.
look fantabulous.
Thank you.
Fantabulous is not even enough of a word to describe it.
I appreciate that.
You betcha. So, I just said you betcha. I think the Minnesota in me is coming out. Yeah, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know.
Yes.
Anyway, my special guest today is Rachel Schromen. She's the managing attorney for the law firm Schromen Law, LLC. So hello, Rachel, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet. How are you feeling? Is everything going well?
Yeah. Despite the weather, I'm having a good week.
It's been a little dreary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, as usual, I like to ask foundational questions of my guests, so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
Because I hardly even know you, but I want them to know you. So would you tell the audience where you were born, raised, went to school, and any other memories during those times that you would like to share with the audience? So any personal anecdotes you want to throw in there? Yeah.
Sure. I was born in Dubuque, Iowa, and I grew up in the country. Our house was on 10 acres in between an apple orchard and a cornfield.
Oh, my goodness.
So out in the country, my dad was an excavator and he owned an excavation company. So I grew up running around, backhoes, excavators, big equipment. We had a barn and a shop and all of that stuff. In fact, I think I had to have been under 1 years old. And there was a newspaper article for Take Your Daughter to Work Day. And I was with my dad digging graves in the winter.
Digging graves.
Yep, because he had the excavator, and so he was out digging graves, which my mom sent that article to me. And I remembered the article, but I kind of thought, in my mind, we were digging like a house foundation or something, because that's something he did mostly, right? And she sent it to me a couple years ago. And in fact, that day he was digging graves, and the article's about how, my dad, even though I was a young girl, and this was in the 80s, even though she's a young girl, I want her to know she can do anything, even if it's excavation. But the tie between digging graves and what I do now with estate planning and end of life and doula work was kind of interesting. I thought, well, gee, it did come full circle a little bit there.
Oh, yeah, there's a connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I guess, do you think that had anything to do with it?
No, I don't think so. I think that's more of a coincidence and just kind of a cool... I call it like a universe moment, where just something where I'm like, oh, wow, that seems like maybe a little more than a coincidence. But that was my growing up outside a lot. We didn't have cable TV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was good in that sense. We learned how to do a lot of things ourselves. Also I was raised in a very, very conservative family. Learned fiscal conservative skills, personally, which was good. But the political leanings, leaving Iowa, I left Iowa, went to college, and considered myself a very, very staunch conservative.
Oh, really?
Which that got unwound.
What happened?
Well, I got a liberal college education, learned about empathy, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, when I went to college, which I went to Winona State, I was a women's studies minor, women and gender studies, and initially started in social work. And in the social work route, there was a lot of just talking about humanity and people's stories. And so, for example, I remember being a freshman in college, and the topic of homelessness came up. And the idea that a homeless person perhaps was struggling with mental health or addiction or didn't have a perfect life, and they weren't just lazy and making that choice not to work and live on the streets, was new to me at the age of 19.
Yeah. I think that's a big misunderstanding about
100%.
homelessness. People just think, they don't want to work. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. But no, it's definitely has to do with mental illness, right?
It has to do with a lot of things, and I think trauma. And growing up, just a lot of the messaging and a lot of the viewpoints and the opinions that I was surrounded in my family and in my community and where I lived were just opposite of what I was exposed to later. And then I did a real fast 180 and, here we are now.
Yeah, awesome. So now let's go into your career as an attorney. Now I don't know if I'm not familiar. I mean, I was a paralegal, full disclosure, but that's different than an attorney. I did personal injury, very easy stuff.
Okay.
They gave us form things and just filled in the names and different things. But as an attorney, did you start in the general sense as an attorney, or you went directly into your fields that you practice today? Explain that and how you got to be an attorney.
So I'll even start back in college. So I was a social work major, women's studies minor, and I switched to law because a professor of mine essentially told me I'd be a great social worker for about a year. And she said, "You're going to burn out real fast." And she said, "Part of the reason I think you'll burn out, Rachel, is in social work, what you might come to find is you can help people to a certain point, but you're buttoned up against the laws all the time. And if you're an attorney, you can just kind of go a little further in the level you're able to help things and even do things that influence and change law." So I switched to pre-law with the intention of going to law school. I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to prosecute domestic violence and sex crimes. Got to law school, realized litigation is not for me.
Yeah.
I do not have a litigator personality.
It's really hard, isn't it?
It's really hard.
It's like, from what I'm hearing from my experience, it's like you're acting because you have a jury there and you have to act jury. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I think,
Performance, I guess, is the word.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, even doing, mock trials or moot court or things like that, it felt similar to delivering a monologue. When you're doing a closing argument, it felt I was in the vagina monologues in college. And so,
Really?
yes, it was my only foray into acting. And when I was doing moot court and these, all of that, it felt very similar to when I was rehearsing and practicing for monologue. And there's a lot more that goes into lawyering, of course, and doing a trial, but the energy around litigation I'm so sensitive to, and even working with clients that are perhaps even in an active trauma response, I just didn't have the ability to boundary set or cope with some of that it would have been a healthy career for me. And I'm still working on some of that, but I was in law school, realized I didn't want to litigate, kind of looked around, wondered, why am I even in law school? Like, what am I going to do now? And a professor suggested that I take elder law as a course. And so I took that course. In fact, I had been volunteering in nursing homes since the age of 14. So I had always been drawn to serve kind of in that demographic and in that end of life space.
Right.
So I took elder law and realized, oh, this really does align with work that I care about and a passion that I have. And just kind of followed down that path. Now, right out of law school, I knew I wanted to start my own practice and firm, but I also knew I needed to work for a couple years to, make and save up some money and to go out on my own and also just get some experience. And my first areas of practice that I worked in were bankruptcy, which was kind of a curveball, but it was just the first job that I got. Actually loved it. A lot of my clients were elder individuals filing bankruptcy after a spouse passed away, filing on medical bills. Because in Minnesota, this is just kind of a side fact, we're one of the few states where spouses are jointly and severally liable for a spouse's medical debt.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So
Oh, no.
worked in bankruptcy, did that. Then I moved into insurance litigation. I don't know why. It was not a great fit, right? But I got the experience. Now I can confidently say, nope, litigation definitely is not for me. And then eventually started Schromen Law and returned back to that estate planning and elder law focus, which I had been focused on in law school.
Now, you were end-of-life doula, you said as well, that you told me
Yeah.
before the show. So that also has a lot to do with what you're doing now with end of
Yeah.
life, right?
Yes.
So can you tell, I don't know if my audience knows what that is. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So I practiced in estate law. My dad passed away October 26th, 2019, so it'll be 4 years tomorrow. He actually died on his 70th birthday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I was doing this legal work in the end of life space. Being with my dad when he passed was the first time I was with someone directly in that death and dying space. And that experience is what just led me to kind of deepen the way that I'm of service in that space. And so I did end of life doula training about a year later. And what an end of life doula does, a lot of people know what a birth doula is. So I'll start with just explaining that because they've been around, they're pretty well known. Birth doula, a woman hires a doula. Her role is to just be with the woman giving birth, focused on her, focused on the birth plan. If doctors seem like they're in a rush, the doula just kind of can be a calming presence, can advocate for the woman giving birth, etc. After the baby comes, sometimes the doula will even provide support or bring meals or help clean for the family, etc. They're varying roles. Death doula, very similar role, different end of the life spectrum. So it's really about holding space, inviting people to be curious, not scared or in denial of that end of life transition. One of the mottos that was repeated a lot when I did the training was, we never look away. So it's someone who's with you, and their role is to be with you in that transition, connected, supporting you, supporting the family. They don't look away. And that's not an appropriate role for family members necessarily. When I was watching my dad pass away, you bet I needed to look away a few times. You bet I needed to step out of the room and take care of myself because there was I had my own things I was processing.
Yeah.
When I'm with someone and they're in their end of life transition, my role is to be with them. I don't have those things coming up.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be hard, though. I don't know how you do it personally. I mean, I saying goodbye to people that you love, or even even if you don't know the person, there is a connection with that person.
And I think,
right?
Yes, absolutely. What's interesting is, I met a woman this past weekend at a friend's baby shower, and she's a defense litigator. And I went, oh my God, I don't know how you do that. And she goes, it just, I don't know. It fits with me.
Yeah.
It sounds so stressful and overwhelming to me. People who work in the end of life space, most will tell you it really feels like a calling.
It is.
Yes. And when I was with my dad when he passed, it was the most in my body I've ever felt. It was the most present in the moment I've felt. It was very, very hard, but it was one of the most beautiful spiritual experiences I've ever had. After he passed, I sat with my hands under his body for about an hour, and I could just feel the energy in his body, and I felt connected and at peace. That wasn't the experience of everyone else in that process, right? And the way that I was able to support family members, things that I was saying, I even kind of walked away and went, how did I know to say that? How did I remain so calm? Why was I moved to tears of joy and gratitude for the experience I just had with my father, not 100% pain and overwhelm? And I chalked it up to, we don't get to pick where we're meant to serve during this lifetime or what gifts we're given on this earth. And I leaned into it. All these things had kind of led me down the path already.
Right.
And I just volunteer a little right now doing that. I mean,
wow, bless you. I don't know how you do that. I mean, you are, only empaths could do this, and I'm an empath. But the problem is I don't have the courage you do. Because like I said, I would probably get too attached to the person, and losing to one after the other like that would be damaging to me, I think.
Well, I have to put a lot of time into boundary setting and being able to protect my own energy. I mean, I definitely have invested a lot of time and money into working with therapists and developing those skills so I can do this work.
Yeah. Well, moving to the next question,
Yeah.
would you tell the listeners what particular fields of law you specialize in and why those are the fields you chose?
Yeah. So my firm offers services in estate planning and elder law. That's wills and trusts, healthcare directives, powers of attorney. The elder law portion of our practice is largely helping families plan for medical assistance for long-term care. So how to protect assets or plan for long-term care costs in a way that doesn't just use up all the assets in the family legacy. We do estate and trust administration, so helping families after someone passes away. And then we do a little bit of family law, but we only do prenups and postnups. So we don't do divorce law, but we do the pre-planning. Mm-hmm. And a couple things led me to that area of practice. One, wanting to serve in working with individuals, not always elders. I have a lot of young clients, but planning for end of life and holding space and creating conversation around end of life is definitely a very strong personal passion of mine.
Yeah.
But I also attended a seminar, or it was a conference, maybe my first year that I started my firm.
Uh-huh.
And they said, write down what you do for clients. Not, I give them a will or
Right.
provide legal services. What do you really give them in a meaningful way? And I sat and I reflected and I said, I give people a sense of security and a plan for a future and some sort of closure around something that's very unknown. Mm. And the woman said, what happened in your childhood to make you so passionate about that? And boy, did it connect to my childhood trauma. And so that's part of it too, is personally, I grew up with a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown about what the future would hold, a lot of surprises that were very hard to process as a child, a lot of not a strong sense of safety. Estate planning provides that, the opposite of that, right? So that's another, I think, reason I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah, wow. And also through my legwork, doing this show, preparing it to have, Miss Schromen here on my show, I have discovered that you have a particular interest in helping veterans as well, first responders, and terminal cancer patients. My God, the empathy that you have is incredible. That's why I had to have you on my show. I mean, I was looking at this and, God bless you, really. I mean, it's amazing work you're doing.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about those groups and the work that you do for them?
Yes. Veterans and first responders, there's a couple legal clinics that I've volunteered with. Wills for Heroes is a pretty well-known one. They provide pro bono estate planning to first responders. MACV Clinic, it's a clinic for veterans that takes place at the Veterans Hospital. They provide all sorts of legal services across the board. I've gone and volunteered doing what I do, estate planning for veterans. And then I volunteer with Cancer Legal Care, and they provide pro bono legal services, again, across the board to individuals with a terminal cancer diagnosis that qualify. So our firm takes one or two pro bono clients a month. And of course, there's a lot of personal ties. One of my best friends is a first responder. She was in that field for a while. I watched her go through and process some of the trauma that comes with, she was a firefighter. She was in high-risk situations. She had colleagues die. Became more passionate than I was originally about that work. My dad was a veteran. He spent most of his life an active alcoholic and an abusive alcoholic due to PTSD. He found recovery, got sober towards the end of his life, about 5 years before he passed away. I have a lot of empathy for veterans, and I care very deeply about supporting them. And then my mom's a cancer survivor. God, I haven't said this publicly yet, but as of this summer, I'm a cancer survivor. Melanoma. And so...
Well, I shared with you that I am.
Yeah.
I'm a double cancer survivor, but
Yeah.
I was lucky Both times they caught it early. But it's scary.
Same.
It's scary. Hearing that word is very frightening.
It is, and there's a grief process that happens
Yeah.
with just learning it because your life changes. My life has
Oh, yeah.
definitely changed. My summers are going, and it might seem trivial,
Mm-hmm.
but my outdoor, summers are going to look different. I will have skin scans 2 times a year. What got caught looked just like a freckle, and boy, I'm covered in them. So having, being able to offer those services to families, and when I work with cancer patients through cancer legal care, it's not uncommon that they've been given a terminal diagnosis. And when they can have this planning in place, what it does is it just gives them more space and more ability to be present with their family and not worrying about, well, what are they going to be left with? What's the mess going to be? What's going to happen when and if I'm gone? And I care a lot about creating that space for families to be with each other and have that quality time and not be robbed of it because they're worrying about getting legal things done or not being able to afford it and leaving a mess for their family.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's that diagnosis. Just hearing the word itself is such a jarring word.
Yeah.
I mean, even though I was lucky twice, I missed the bullet missed me twice, as I like to say. It's still scary because
Yeah.
there's a chance it can come back again. And I
Yep.
have to go through the whole
Yes.
rigmarole again. So, yeah. Also, through my legwork, I found you have an interest in helping women who were victims of domestic abuse. Now, my mother and I were victims of domestic abuse because of my stepfather. She was an old-fashioned Italian woman
Yeah.
who, the man is the king of the castle kind of thing. I don't know if your parents were like that too, but they were old-fashioned Catholic. The man is, runs Italian,
Yeah. Yes.
And my mother was, she listened to him and she did everything he said. And he kind of was attracted to that subservient kind of personality, I guess.
Yeah.
And when they got married, everything changed. He became very abusive, called her every name in the book, smacked her around, ripped her clothes. And it was traumatic for me as a child too, because I'm around it, and he would threaten me, say, "I'm going to kill your son," in front of her, to stress her out and get her upset. So domestic abuse is personal to me. So thank you again for your work in that field, I guess. Can you share some of your experience that you've had? You don't have to name names, just experiences that you've come across in your field of study.
About
And
around
your
domestic violence?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's personal to me as well. I won't go into a ton of detail about that, but I've lived it. And so it's personal to me. As a woman, domestic violence, sexual assault, those go hand in hand for me. I'm a survivor of sexual assault. I think and I am not exaggerating when I say this, every woman I know is a survivor of sexual assault. And it is so pervasive. It is so common. Things that are considered normal in a relationship in our society are abusive. Things that happen to women that they don't recognize as actually sexual assault.
Yes.
Gosh, working in bars in college and having, a hand go up my skirt, or just things that would happen that you think, oh, it's part of the job. No, you're
It's
just
not
sexually
part of the
assaulted.
job. No.
Yeah. Very, very personal to me. And I have a good friend and colleague, Yvonne Spangler, who founded the Domestic Abuse Legal Advocacy Center in 2016. And it's essentially a nonprofit law firm. And this is the only model like this that I know of in the country. They go into domestic violence shelters and provide pro bono legal clinics to the women in the shelters. So talk about providing a free service that's safe and accessible.
Oh, wow.
And then they provide pro bono in-court representation for orders for protection and eviction expungements. I've volunteered with the organization since it started. helping Yvonne to get it up and going, doing the clinics directly with volunteering. Right now, a lot of my involvement is fundraising. I do a lot of fundraising for the organization and helping with clinics and recruit volunteer attorneys.
And again, being that I was a child when it doesn't make it any less of a scar in my, and I mean, there's a lot of personal issues that I went through. I had to go seek help as well.
Oh, God, absolutely.
My mom, actually, it's funny, even though it's not a funny issue, it's funny. My mother worked in in the mental health center in a hospital in New York. So she had access to psychologists. So after she divorced him, she sent me for help because she saw it was really affecting me.
Good.
I'd be every little noise I'd jump, and screaming used to make me uncomfortable, and I would get I'd cower, and it wasn't normal. So
well, in children who witness domestic violence, the chance that they will end up in a relationship that has domestic violence, whether they are the victim or the perpetrator, real high. I mean, that's what they're referencing when they talk about the cycle. So the fact that you were able to get help as a child and hopefully break that cycle that's massive.
Oh my goodness.
That doesn't happen for a lot of kids. And that's a big reason, Yvonne and I are so passionate about that work.
I don't know where I would be today if my mom didn't send me for help, because I mean, I have a very amazing husband. He never put a hand on me or anything.
Yeah.
But he'll raise his voice, like anybody else, when you're stressed out, But there's so much love between us, so it's not. I mean, I don't know where I'd be, and I don't want to think about that.
Right.
And it's funny because when I go back to that time, it's very cathartic for me. It's almost like I can see it was almost like a fork in the road. I could have gone this way, but I went that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Anyway, you're so amazing. Oh my God. I'm a big fan. I'm sorry.
Thanks. You're just building me up.
A big fan. These are very serious issues. I don't mean to make light of it, but it's something. I mean, sometimes you do have to, in the eyes of the adversity, you have to try to build it up and try to get through it. And sometimes humor works. That's what worked for me. That's why I'm a silly person today.
Same.
I've never been like that. As a kid, my mother would say, "You're too shy. You have to be more friendly, and you go out and play with the kids." I didn't want to play with kids. Sometimes if I did play with kids, it was girls because boys didn't like me. So, and then I grew up, and all that help that I got, and then coming out of the closet and being who I am, I started to become silly. And I think that's my defense mechanism, I think.
Well, I laugh because I relate to this, but I saw a meme recently online that said, so are you funny or did you have a good childhood? I thought, I'm real funny.
That's hilarious. Well, most comedians, they say they come from broken families or abuse. Yeah. So again, mental health is an issue that resonates with you. But as a gay man, I remember having to deal with it, with the fear of coming out and mental anguish that I went through, and abuse and bullying and all that. A lack of mental health access in the LGBT community is a huge problem nowadays. Do you have any personal stories you'd like to share about helping someone that went through a terrible ordeal in their sexual orientation or with their sexual identity? Or make a general, talk about it generally, I guess.
Well, I would say, I grew up, I went to high school in the early 2000s, and we had a rainbow club, and things were starting to be, I think, more accepted. I also grew up in a smaller town in Iowa that was very, very conservative and very Catholic.
Catholic?
Yeah, big Catholic community.
Oh, wow.
Ton of Catholic schools, lots of Catholic churches. I was in the Rainbow Club, and I had a number of friends who were gay. There weren't a lot of out gay kids in high school. One of them real sad story, and I won't name names or anything, but his parents were very, very religious, and he actually got sent to conversion camp. And in high school, the struggles with not being accepted and all of that, he turned to alcohol and drugs, got in a car accident. Someone died in the car accident. He ended up in prison. And, the narrative around it was around his alcohol and drug use, but having known him and kind of seen what he lived, there's this 19-year-old in prison, and I'm looking at the fact he grew up in a household that didn't accept him, that condemned him, that sent him to conversion camp and conversion therapy. It was just absolutely awful.
And I think that's why he ended up.
I do too.
Where he is being incarcerated, because again, there were kids I grew up with, back in the day that ran away from home and lived in the streets, or they would live in these. There was a hotel in the village where runaway kids would go, and older gay men would house them and help them out, and it was just You need support. I understand you have a religious background, but God also, Jesus also said, love thy neighbor, and these are your children.
Yeah.
So So the final question before the shift, I noticed that your law firm employs many women, and you love to empower women. Can you talk a little bit briefly about that?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't
why it ended up that way, I guess.
Yeah. Not necessarily something I went into super intentionally. However, I'm also not surprised that my team is all women. I was a women's and gender studies minor. I'm a feminist. I've been involved in Minnesota Women Lawyers. I network almost primarily with women. Again, just because that's what I'm drawn to. I have a huge passion for helping and supporting other women. Part of that is really just paying it forward because I had so much help and support myself. I talked to a attorney the other day, a female attorney who's thinking about going solo, starting her own practice, and she said, "You're just so brave. I don't know how you did it. You're so strong when you started your business." And I went, I had so many women on speed dial that I would call when I was having a panic attack, sitting at my house going, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Who am I to think I can build a law firm? And I'd call them and they'd say, Rachel, you're fine. You are going to be great. What questions do you have? We'll help you. And so I've always passed that on. And when I've been growing my practice and I've never had a job listing as I've grown my firm. I've just kind of mentioned, hey, I need an office coordinator. And I put the word out there, and the people that are approaching me have been women.
Because women like that. It's a safe space for women.
Yes.
They don't feel that there's any threats to sexual harassment, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, or any, those just kind of gender undertones that come up of, being accused of being bossy or whatever, things you can still find in the workplace, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
The other attorney at my firm, Melissa Miroslavich, she's the newest attorney that I've hired, she approached me about coming to work for me. And she loved that was an all-woman team. She loved kind of the approach that I take with employees of empowering them to have a career that's fulfilling, actually listening to what excites you, what are you passionate about, what do you want your career to look like within Schromen Law, and how can we work to achieve that while also doing what we need to do for Schromen Law, It's really just how I would want an employer to work with me and treat me and provide for me. Yeah.
So now we have come to the part of the show I like to call the shift, and we're like going long here. So I'm going to we're going to do a lightning round on these questions.
Oh, okay.
All right. So we shift the reason it's called the shift is because we shift the questioning away from your personal journey as an attorney, and to
get serious.
Yeah, opinion.
Okay.
Current events,
Yeah.
And make sure you pronounce that F in shift because otherwise we have a problem. Yeah.
Okay.
So being that you are an attorney, I was wondering if you haven't followed the upcoming trials of the former president, and if you've had any opinions about any of them, especially the Georgia trial where Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesebro, Jenna Ellis, yada, yada. It seems that it's a house of cards falling. have pleaded. It's pleaded, not pled. I learned that
okay.
in pre-law.
Yeah.
Guilty. What's in store for the former president now that these three members of the conspiracy are pleading guilty? And do you think that will be helpful to the prosecution?
Yeah. Well, yes, I have followed it. Coming off the topic of mental health, I follow these things at somewhat of a distance because, boy, can I go down a rabbit hole, and it is not good for my mental health with this stuff. I think a lot of people can relate to that with what an absolute nightmare that presidency was and continues to just haunt us. So, very interesting that they pleaded guilty. The fact that they're pleading and not getting jail time, I think, speaks to what they know or what they're going to offer the prosecution, which will
That's what I say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It'll be really, really, really interesting to see.
Because they wouldn't accept they wouldn't give them an offer of a plea deal if they didn't have important information that would help their case, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's a big
the whole
deal.
thing.
It's a big deal they're not getting jail time. So,
Oh, yeah.
I think
especially Jenna Ellis. She was like running around with Giuliani and spreading the lies about the election. And
yeah, I don't think it'll bode well for Mr. Trump, and I think it'll be good for the prosecution. I'm definitely interested to see what comes from that.
yeah, and also we haven't had a Speaker of the House for how many weeks now? I've lost track.
Yeah, seriously.
Hello, Speaker of the House. Anybody want to be the Speaker? Maybe Brett will be the Speaker of the House. I don't know. Somebody will do it. Do you want to be Speaker of the House, Brett?
Not under the Republicans, no.
Right.
Just kidding. So after McCarthy vacated the chair, and then Scalise and Jordan and Emmer, and now they've nominated this guy named Mike Johnson. The only thing I know about him is he doesn't like the gays. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like LGBT people. So what do you say about this whole fiasco? I call it a fustercluck.
Yeah, well, fiasco and fustercluck are
It's a
definitely
dyslexic
appropriate.
version of the other, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know how the Republican Party can be anything but embarrassed about
It's embarrassing.
what an absolute fiasco it is.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
I think it's going to guarantee the Democrats take back the House. It's gotta, because why would you vote for a party that's not doing? We
Right.
have with the the things going on. We have the debt ceiling. All of
Together.
Yeah, and they can't. Yeah. Another question here is Senator Tommy Tuberville has held back military promotions because of the new abortion policy that would pay military personnel to travel to their home state to pursue reproductive health care. But abortions, it's just to get the child bearer or the woman to their home. So the defense secretary ordered the Defense Department to allow troops and their to travel to pursue this health care. So there's actions. He's also damaging, really putting under. We don't have people in leadership positions in the military because he's holding them back, just because of that he doesn't want people to travel to get women's health care.
Yeah, I mean, I
What
want to say obviously, but maybe it's not obvious. I don't agree with it.
Well, yeah.
I obviously don't agree with it. It seems, I believe we should have need, and if under our current laws and how it means travel to their home state, then that needs to be available to them. It also seems bizarre, and now I haven't researched the laws or regulations or anything behind this, but even just on a high level, it seems like an abuse of power. Like I even imagine as an employer to just say, to put a stance down that, well, none of this is happening until we stop providing something that I don't believe in. Bizarre.
Do your job, man.
Yeah.
Do your job. You were elected to do a job.
Agreed.
And our military is very important. I mean, if we don't have leaders in our military, people, that in the know, that people that know what they're doing, it could become a fustercluck.
Yes,
as I said
agreed.
before. Before we close out the show, and we have a lot of time still, so because we went through the lightning round, we really lightninged, which was good. Is there a topic that we haven't mentioned that you would like our listeners to know about that you're passionate about and you would like to talk about? Because I want to learn myself. I know there's you've mentioned mental health, women's abuse, elder care. Can you talk about any of those other issues, or or elaborate on what you talked about before?
Well, those are all things I'm very passionate about, largely due to personal ties and experiences. But another issue that there's actually legislation that's been moved in Minnesota as of this past March around green burial and furthering availability of that in Minnesota.
Oh my God, that's Angela Woosley. She was on my show.
Yes. So Angela Woosley, she's a local life doula, and she has much more than that. She's a funeral director. She's a mortician. She's taught at the U. She's very, very passionate about this as well.
Could you believe she was on my show? I was passed out.
I know. You told me. I'm like, oh my God, she's one of the coolest people I know.
I know. I actually saw her on PBS. She was doing a show about end of life and burials and all that. And my husband and I are sitting there. He goes, "Oh, I know her. She's a friend of mine." Had her on my show.
Yeah, she's a powerhouse. And this legislation is around natural organic reduction, which is, to put it in layman's terms, composting of human remains.
Right.
And if you want to talk about green burial, composting, earth to earth, that's about as green as it gets in my opinion. And it's great for the environment. I think it's a huge move in the right direction for sustainable green burials. It's not legal in Minnesota right now, and so that legislation is in front of Minnesota legislators this year, and I feel very passionate about it, and I hope it passes. It's starting to pass in other states, Washington, Oregon, I believe, California, I think Colorado.
What do those states all have in common that you just named? Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yes.
You know, I mean, and when she was on my show, she was talking about water burial.
Yes, yeah. And I have clients, they come into my office and they care about the environment, they care about green burial. And they say, I want a green burial. I really want, not to negatively impact the earth. I want to return to the earth. And then they bring up things, I'm going to be quite frank, I believe marketing has missed than it is. So an example. Water burial has come out and they say, well, this is better for the environment than your typical burial. Not really, actually. This whole, I want to be turned in, people think it's very green. Well, what the company does is they cremate you. They put your cremains in with the soil of a tree that's going to be planted.
Right.
That's not composting. That's not giving nutrients to that tree. It looks green, but it's not necessarily, right? And so as we move into getting more laws passed to give more for what is green burial, and people educate themselves and learn does this actually look like. Now, you have to get past, there's a lot of people that don't want to learn about this and don't want to talk about it. Like it's kind of, like I don't want to read about it.
It's gruesome.
Yes, it can seem very overwhelming. And don't even get me started on how our society treats the topic of death and this topic, right?
It's Halloween, so I guess
we can go down the path.
We can go down that path. We have carte blanche now.
Yes. But learning about, I think, is really important because it opens up what's available, options, and it really gives us some more truly green options that are going to be good for the world. But
people are burying people, though, with formaldehyde in their bodies. That's not good for the environment. You're talking about, land burial as opposed to water is not...
Correct.
It's not green.
Well, and even green burial in Minnesota can be buried in a green manner where you don't have a casket, maybe you're just shrouded or the land is kept natural and maybe they put one body per plot. How does that work with land use?
Yeah.
There's just, Europe is doing it differently. There's a lot of different things that are.
Answer really, cremation is the most friendly way to.
It's a potentially more environmentally friendly way, but the natural organic reduction, I think, if you look into it and learn about it.
So that's just basically putting the body in the ground, and that's it.
No.
There's other things going on there?
So there are a lot of these places doing it are composting the body in, I'll use the word pods. So there's a company called
A pod, P-O-D?
Yep. There's a company called Recompose. Katrina Spade started it. She's another rock star. She's out on the West Coast, and she designed these pods that a body goes into. They put in organic material with the body. They introduce certain bacterias and whatever. They keep the pod at a certain temperature, and then they rotate it. And within, I think it's a week or two or a few weeks, they have compost. And then that compost is put back into the earth.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And there aren't emissions. It's really, really cool. I read an article about a guy, I don't remember a lot of specifics, but there's a guy in Colorado doing this in wine barrels.
Wine barrels.
Yes.
But you have to go to
Composting.
a specific place to have this service done, right?
Yes. And
Because not everybody's doing it, basically.
no,
you know.
because it's not legal. But once it's legalized and we get these companies that are offering it, it's a really, really, really cool, beautiful, natural option that can be available to families and to individuals.
My last question to you before we end the show, because
Yeah.
I can go on with you
Yeah.
and forever. You're amazing. When you talk about end of life, because I don't know how the show became more about end of life, but because you have such a storied career about different, I could go down every avenue here. But I'm fascinated with this. Legalized suicide, legal suicide that happen. Certain states have legalized that. Do you have a final opinion about that?
Quickly,
Yes. We have a minute
quickly.
here.
I think it should be available to individuals. I think it gives them control, gives them a say, allows them to be a more active participant at end of life. I think it can allow people to die with dignity.
Do we have assisted suicide here in Minnesota?
No.
It's not legal yet, right?
Not yet, no.
Well, I'm surprised we didn't push it. It's wonderful, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because if I was suffering beyond recognition and I couldn't take it,
Yeah.
it's just, we do it with animals
I know.
to be humane, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Rachel,
Yes,
so
thank you for having me.
much. Oh, my God, weren't you? Was it fun?
Oh, so much fun. Yes.
Yeah, and you're just full of information. The show is only 50 minutes. It could have gone on for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But maybe you can come on again.
I'd love to.
Another day. We could talk about
be happy to.
other things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's been a great pleasure. I just keep saying that because you are amazing. You're an amazing empath.
Thank you.
And we need more empaths in the world.
Agreed.
We do. And to the listeners, hi, listeners, thank you so much for joining us today and joining Rachel and I in our conversation. And we also want you to sub. We want you to click, do whatever you can to support the show. And my name is Philip Anthony, and on behalf of the Downright Upright Show, I'd like to say bye for now. Ciao for now. You could wave in your
Okay.
camera.
Oh, yeah.
We just wave. Like my fan. Yeah.